Thanks, Elaine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Mary Barone. I'm an organizational change manager, and today I'm thrilled to share my favorite change management book as part of our book club event. So the book is called Change Intelligence: Use the Power of CQ to Lead Change That Sticks by Dr. Barbara Trautlein. So the author is a principal and founder of Change Catalyst, LLC. It's a certified woman-owned business. She's the author of the best-selling book, Change Intelligence: Use the Power of CQ to Lead Change That Sticks. She's the creator of the CQ system for developing change intelligence, which you can get as a report when you read the book. And she's a super popular keynote speaker. She speaks on leading change at pretty much every change management or conference. A lot of them are project management conferences as well, where she'll go out and she'll be either keynote or one of the speakers at the presentation. She's a recognized leader in the global change management community, and she was honored as a 2015 Change Management Consultant of the Year by the Association of Change Management Professionals. I have in this slide my favorite quote from the book in totality. You can't just tolerate change like a leaf blowing in the wind. You have to take charge of your career and your company and lead change. I found that to be pretty inspiring. I also wanted to share my story a little bit about this book and the author. I was on a train to New York City, sitting in on a conference. It was a virtual call in 2019, and I was a project manager, but looking to become something else. And I was thrilled that change management was part of the agenda. So I went to the session that was led by Dr. Trautlein, and amazed at what change management actually was and what change intelligence was. I got the book. I love the book. It is my favorite change management book. I've read lots of others, but this one's my favorite because it's easy to understand. And hopefully this presentation, you'll understand it as well. Hopefully you've also read the book. Oh, go to the next slide. So change intelligence, what is it and why it matters? This is part one. There are two other parts that I'll go through. The second part is about how to apply the CQ. And then the third part is how we can use it throughout the organization as well, not just about ourselves. So CQ is an idea whose time has come. We've heard of IQ, we've heard of EQ. Why not CQ? As project managers and change managers, we deal with change every single day, often multiple times, because change is so popular now. It's just a part of our lives, and the change comes a lot faster than it used to years ago. So the CQ is helpful for help people to lead change. And in this presentation, we'll talk a little bit about how you can learn to approach change positively for yourself, manage change, and then lead change throughout the organization. Here's a quote that I really loved in the very first part of the book. It really resonated with me, and I'm curious if it resonated with you as well. And we can talk about that in the breakout rooms. Leaders saw change as something they did to others, not with them or for them. They saw others as resisting change, when in reality, the resistors probably didn't understand the change, feel committed to it, or even see its benefits. The next piece is I wanted these leaders to turn the mirror back on themselves and see that the negative behaviors they saw in their teams were likely a reflection of a lack of effective change leadership on their own part. And I thought about a lot of the sponsors that I've had in the past, and they talked about how they wanted people to change, but it was always about what those people needed to do. And it didn't sound like that person was part of the change. I've had others that were a part of the change. They're like, this is what's happening to us, and this is how we are going to lead with it. And I think it makes a big difference. Okay, so what the heck does CQ stand for? It stands for change quotient, and it is the awareness of one's own change leader style and the ability to adapt one's style to be optimally effective in leading change across a variety of people and situations. One of the things that I really love about this book is that it's super simple to understand and execute on. Basically, the author breaks down the CQ into three main areas: heart, head, and hands. I probably don't even need to go through the instructions or the page on the side here to talk about what the head, heart, and hands are. I will anyway. The three major areas are heart, which is a description of the people who lead and connect with people through change emotionally. They have empathy. The folks with head are the visionaries, the people who are strategic. And then the last one are the people who execute the change. They have high, what they call hands. To me, that makes a lot of sense. This chart that I have here is from the free expert excerpt that you can get on the Change Catalyst website. It's the first chapter is free, or part one is free, and I thought it would be helpful. You can get a download of this presentation if you'd like. It's on the PMI New Jersey site, as well as a copy of this, or you can download, well, I guess you can view the presentation later on tonight. Okay, so what's your CQ? You may have an idea already. I thought I was hands, and I was wrong. The assessment helps you understand what is your CQ, and then what's missing from your change leadership style. None of us leads only with one all the time, head, heart, or hands. We all blend all three. We just have a preference for one of them. The head is focusing on the big picture goal, the business objective. The heart, personally connecting with people at an emotional level. And then the hands, providing teams, tools, and skills like a savvy project manager. The three areas are broken down into other subparts because people have mixtures, and these are some of the mixtures. And I'm going to have this triangle chart on most of my slides and in the groups when we break out later, so that you don't have to worry about memorizing it. Oh. All right, so what do they stand for? Coach is all about the heart. That's the big heart at the top of the triangle, and they love engaging and supporting people. I thought I was going to be high hands. It turns out I ended up being super high in heart, and coaching was my change leader style. Once I read the book and the descriptions, it actually did resonate with me, and I realized that that is what my tendency is. Champion is the purple in the triangle. This is a combination of heart and head, and these folks use combined head and heart to excite people about the change. We often talk about the champions that we want to lead our projects. The really good ones have a lot of this heart, emotion, and the visionary piece. Then there's visionaries. That's the blue, high head, always looking forward to an inspiring future. The driver is the green. They're a mixture of the head and the hands, and they see an exciting future and they want to drive towards it. Also, they also make good sponsors. The facilitators are the folks that know the tasks and how to motivate people to follow those tasks. The adapters, that's the one in the middle there, the gray. And these folks have a little bit of all of them. So they're the adapters. They're generally flexible, politically savvy, and willing to collaborate with others. And then the yellow are the executors. These are the folks that get things done. They know, people know that they can rely on these folks to not just talk, but take action and execute. Often their execution is backed up by a comprehensive step-by-step plan, like a project plan. Now we go into part two. Where do we go from here? If you've read the book and you've taken the assessment, you already know your CQ. Hopefully, well, I wouldn't say hopefully. I'm curious if you were surprised like I was. You also know your strengths, your blind spots, how you contribute to an organization, But now that you know all that, where do you go from here? Well, this is where we learn to apply it. You need to use heart, head, and hands to be a great change leader. You need all three. To make sure that you're using the other two, or it depends on where you are in the triangle. But for me, for example, high heart, I need to make sure that I'm still incorporating the head and the hands to make sure that I lead successfully. So I constantly look for productive ways to fill the gaps that I'm leaving open. If we ignore any of the heart, head, or hands, we're drastically reducing our chances of success. The goal of the book is to gain awareness onto your change leader style and then adopt it. Here are some strategies to lead change when you have some of those areas that you're not so strong in. The first one is to design systems and structures to keep your blind spots on your radar. For example, if you're low in heart, you want to make sure that you're connecting with the people. So consider like a poll. Microsoft Teams has great polling where you can just get feedback from people. Another way is to partner with others who are strong where you are weak. For example, if you have a low head score, it would be helpful then to talk to somebody who has high heart or high hands before you give a presentation or a, I don't know, like a town hall or something, just to make sure that you're hitting all three areas that to make the change as successful as possible. All right, now here we get to the good stuff. CQ for project teams. It's probably not a surprise if we as individuals have a CQ, then when we get those individuals together as a group, the group then has their own CQ style. There's an example in the book that I'm going to talk about here where a manufacturing family-owned business, it was a private company, had a challenge where they would bring in a host of temporary workers at one part of the year during the winter to help with the busy time so that they could get their products out on time in the summer when it was super crazy busy. Unfortunately, they kept having problems with the training for those temp workers. And when they applied CQ, they realized that they, as a group, had a tendency to go towards high heart. It was a family-owned business. People were encouraged to talk to their managers about problems, and the managers would help them solve it. You could even go to somebody high up in the organization and talk to them. It was a very welcoming type of environment. They realized, though, that they didn't have high head, and they realized that that hurt them because when they tried to talk to senior management about the costs and executing, senior management didn't want to hear about the people. They only wanted to hear about the bottom line. So they had to learn to adjust their approach to be able to negotiate and talk to people that are high in the head. And then they also realized that they didn't have any executors. So any materials, they were never used as intended, and they weren't executed because the people on the team weren't good at that. And when they took all that together, they realized then why they were struggling and then adjusted it and fixed it.
So,
you can
Mary, Barbara has joined the session if you want to know.
Oh, great. Wow, we have the
yeah, I was just I didn't realize that you knew that I was on the line or not, so I was just emailing the gang. So yeah, hi. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No, this is great. John, is she on screen or do I stop sharing? What do I do?
She's on screen now. She's spotlighted.
She is spotlighted. She's with you. And great. If you want to stop the sharing and just have the two of you, that's fine too. But you can go on with the presentation.
Okay, I don't want to mess anything up. So Barbara, I have a couple of questions. Can I call you Barbara or should I call you?
Yes, please do. Please do. Thanks so much, Mary.
We have a couple of questions for you. Is there anything you wanted to say before I ask some questions?
No, just thank you so much for hosting this, and John and Elaine for providing all the support. And I was just thrilled to hear that your chapter was creating a book group using my my book, and just thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm thrilled to chat with you all.
Well, thank you. I was telling the group how much I love this book and how it changed my whole career. I went from project management to change management. I heard you speak and I read the book in September of 2019. And then I took the ProSci certification in October of 2019, and I've never looked back.
Wow. Well, that's why I created the book, again, to for the first 20 years of my career, I was a combination of a change management and leadership development consultant. And then, about 15 years ago, I stepped back and I said, we still have such a high failure rate of change, but we're very smart and we know a lot about project management, change management, but it is a lot about the process, right, of project or change. And then we have a lot of tools to develop leadership capabilities, but, communication, conflict management, coaching, but really not about how to do this mission critical thing of leading change. So that's why I created Change Intelligence, or CQ, to fill those two gaps in the change space and in the leadership and team and interpersonal space. It's not about just managing change or projects, and it's not about kind of generic leadership or interpersonal skills. It really is about this intersection of leading change.
That was the first question I was going to ask you, and you already answered it. Thank you.
You are most welcome. You are most welcome.
The second question I had was, how did you come up with CQ?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm an organizational psychologist by training. And so I did spend the first couple decades of my career, as you read in the book, right, starting off in steel mills and heavy industry, and helping and then moving into different kinds of industries like healthcare and high tech, and working in a variety of different change initiatives. And I realized that people who are very successful in different aspects of their career struggle to lead change, and many organizations struggled or failed to reach the benefits from their change initiatives and their projects that they hoped for. And I realized that there was something missing. And I also knew that, again, as a psychologist, that change starts with us. And so I had used with my clients, because a lot of the work I did in my change projects were around creating, again, empowering work systems, self-managed teams, what we now call employee engagement. And so I'd used a lot of different assessment tools. So the DISC, the Myers-Briggs, Strength Finders, and I think they're also powerful and I love them. And yet I knew that there was something missing. I know that is, as you read in early chapters of my book, the brain on change is different, right? The brain on change is different. And I know that when we are in that space of change, we can go to that fear threat mode, right? And we're just not as successful. So I really wanted to create, so I knew that, again, to be successful in life and work, we all know our IQ, right? And I think everybody on this webinar have a strong IQ, and we know the importance of EQ, or emotional intelligence, for success at life and work, right? Actually, EQ is more correlated with success than in business and strong relationships in life than IQ is. And I just knew that there was something else. There was something in addition to that. We needed to be smart about leading ourselves and others through change. I think we often think that because we're exposed to it so much, we've experienced so much change, and some of us leading our projects, we're leaders of it, but we still struggle with it. So that's really how I came up with this whole idea of CQ, or change intelligence, that just like we have other intelligences and we need to be smart in these different ways, we also need to be smart in leading change. And so that's how I came up with it.
I love it. It's brilliant and it's simple. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Stella, you had a question. Do you want to ask it now?
Sure. I was just wondering about the nuances between heart, head, and hands. And was it easier for an executive that was one or the other to move into the other two, that were sort of a gap?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And just to set some expectations, as I had mentioned to Mary and the team, that I am kind of in between a client offsite that I had all day and a client dinner. So I actually have about 15 more minutes to spend here. So I just want to set those expectations and not be rude, but happy to spend, answer as many questions as I can in the next 15 minutes. So that is a great question. And so I can answer that in many ways. One way I would answer it is that the least common style, interestingly, in the database is the driver. And as you can see there on the triangle, I think it's still showing anyway, or you have the book in front of you, that the driver style is a combination of the head and the hands, right? And that is the least common style. Why do I think that is the least common style? Well, as we know from the project management world, what is one of the most common things that we talk about is bridging the gaping chasm between strategy and execution. Right. So it's very, very difficult to typically that, organizations have these great strategies, these visions, these missions they want to accomplish. That's the head. Right. Then we in the project management world, right, in change management, we have these ways that we want to execute that strategy, right? Very hands oriented. We want to get from here to there. We want to make it real in the field. We want to deal with the issues and the risk. We have all our project plans, right? We want to execute that. That's the hands. It is when we look at correlating from a psychometric perspective, head and hands in the database, it's very challenging for people to be both, right? It's almost, even the people who are drivers, sometimes they say they're kind of not bipolar, but they're bifurcated. They're sometimes in that high head visionary space, right? Thinking big picture and long term. And then they're at other times, they're very much, being tactical, executional, right? Kind of making it happen. And to bridge that, to really be that true driver, right? That gets both at the same time and is really thinking and operating that way is less common. So it is, so what I've seen is that it is easier. It's not necessarily easy because somebody who's very high head might be challenged to also think about the people that are going to be impacted by the changes. Somebody who's very high heart might also be challenged to think about everything they, having actually holding people accountable, stretching them out of their comfort zone. In other words, kind of leveraging the hands, right, to make it happen because they want to care about the people and the relationships. So it can be, of course, difficult for any angle of the triangle to kind of understand and appreciate the other perspectives and incorporate them into their style. But in answer to your question, I think the most challenging can be bridging that head and hands kind of sometimes disconnect, right? The opportunities there, as we see, are absolutely fantastic when we can do this because we need both, right? We need both. And I think that, again, is one of the biggest failure factors in change is that it sounds great in theory, right? And we need to move in that direction for business, but how do we really make that happen, right? And make the resources and figure out how to get from here to there. So we need all three. We need head, heart, and hands, but I think that is the biggest challenge to a lot of times to deal with.
Thank you.
The other question.
Stella, or other questions? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I have one more question that I was curious about. I remember in your presentation, you talked about what it was like to be a change manager when nobody had heard of it really. And you were a young woman and you were working with manufacturing folks. What was that like? It was what year was that?
Yeah, well, I started my business in 1989. So
Okay.
it was a very challenging economic times. We were in a recession, and my first consulting project was in a steel mill that was in bankruptcy. So to your point, I was 25 years old. I'm standing in a room full of all men, introducing myself, and kind of the vision there. They were in bankruptcy. They were in danger of shutting down. The vision was that my mentor and our consulting team were, coming in to transform them to high performance, total quality, self-managed teams. That's the first story I talk about in my book. And, I was basically told steelworkers don't listen to girls, right? Well, the insight I wish I had then that I have now, right, is that what did I hear constantly for the first decade of my career? I worked in heavy industry. So it was steel mills, it was automotive plants, it was refineries. And constantly I would hear that we're technical people, we're engineers, we're business people, we leave our emotions at the door, right? Well, now we know that that's not possible. Literally, again, there's been so much that we've learned in the last decade about neuroscience and how our brains work, right? That's why I said that, again, to our brains, change equals pain. I mean, literally when neuroscientists put electrodes on our brains and introduce them to a change, the same neuroreceptors fire when we get introduced to a change as when we feel physical pain. So literally change equals pain to us. What happens then is that all the good stuff that feeds our brain, the oxygen, the glucose, gets sucked past our neck so we can fight, flight, or freeze, right? What that relates to, the bottom line with that, is that change makes us less smart. Just when we need all our cognitive capabilities to think clearly and creatively, to invent new solutions, to pivot, right? We get blinders on, we go to our well-learned dominant responses, and we don't even do that well. That's our brain on change. So again, I think I kind of intuitively knew that, you know, over 15 years ago now when I started going down this path, right? And now neuroscience shows that, right? But the one thing that I wanted to say that's also related to neuroscience that answers your particular question, Mary, is that what we also know now about how our brains work is that we get a sensation from the outside world. So I'm seeing you, you're seeing me, the audience is hearing us, right? We get a sensation. That sensation first goes to our reptilian brainstem, right? And we register it. That's where we perceive the outside world. Then that sensation travels to our limbic system, which is the seat of our emotions. And then it only then does that travel to our cerebral cortex, which is where we think. So in a very real sense, our emotions mediate all our thinking. We feel before we think. So that is an insight I wish I had back then, because what does that mean? That means that, again, that we think, I think that, again, because a lot of us are business people, right? We're in there in for-profit organizations, or even if it's government or nonprofit or healthcare, whatever it is, we think that how people change is by sharing information with them, which is logical. So that makes them think differently, which that causes change, right? So we think it's actually information, think, change. In fact, what we know now, and if you want another great book recommendation and resource, John Kotter and his colleagues at Harvard, my favorite book by him is The Heart of Change. What he helps us understand is that actually how change happens is that we see a new possibility. We see a new possibility. We have an insight. We see a new possibility that causes us to feel differently, that causes us to change. So it's not information, think, change, it's see, feel, change. And so right there, I think that's absolutely fascinating. And that's why he called this book The Heart of Change. And I talked about the fact that, again, I think head, heart, hands, they're all equally important. And yet relationships get results. Relationships get results. If we can, again, start with the heart, build those relationships, help people, deal with people's emotions, right? And their emotional concerns, because that's where they start. They start feeling like that great Maya Angelou quote, people won't remember what you said or what you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. So again, the heart of the change, start with the heart.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? If there aren't any other questions, if you still have a few minutes, did you want to present this slide for me?
You're so funny. That's hilarious. Well, I would say, again, maybe something else that your audience would find interesting, that is, again, not anything that I published yet anywhere. So it's kind of, forthcoming, right? Is that I've seen so the book and the assessment were published a decade ago. This is actually our 10-year anniversary, which is very exciting. And so what, we've recently done is looked at the research results, because now when we published this, there was just about 100 people in the database. Now there's tens of thousands, right? So we've seen some very interesting trends over time, and especially in the last 3 years since the pandemic, we've seen two very interesting trends. One of them is that we're seeing more people leading from the heart than ever before. Again, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. We can be successful with any style, but I think because that the last 3 years between the pandemic, social justice issues, wars, right, things that have cut to the core of our common humanity, we're seeing more people, right, more leading from the heart than ever before. So that's, and again, what has changed, but one person changing at a time, right? So it is about leading people through leading people through change. So that's one change. The second change is that we're seeing more of the blended styles and especially more adapters over time. And again, I think that maybe that is not, that's right. The folks in the middle who are kind of mid-range or head, heart, hands, right? Again, some people ask me, is the point to become an adapter, right? And no, absolutely not. Adapters have significant strengths because they can kind of intuitively see the need for people, purpose, and process, and they can pivot, let's say, rather seamlessly to, make sure that those missings are accommodated for, but they have some challenges too. Like you saw in the chapter in the book, they can seem too chameleon-like. They can confuse themselves with what's the best way to go. They can seem kind of overly political behind the scenes. So they have challenges too. And though, I think that we may be seeing more adapters because people have had to pivot so much, right, in the last 3 years. So, so we've had to really, again, engage the heart much more. Again, deal with, we're all in each other's, living rooms, right? And so we've had to do that. We've had to embrace technology in new ways, this virtual technology. So we need to lead from the hands in new ways. And we've had to lift our heads up from the muck and the mire and the drama and the tragedy that we're seeing all around us, and inspire people with what's possible in the future, right? So we've all had to flex these muscles in different ways and build new capabilities than we ever have before. So I just thought that those were two interesting global trends that we're seeing that might be of interest to the audience.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Well, again, Mary, everybody, thank you so much for hosting this, PMI New Jersey, all the wonderful people in the room. And again, reach out to me at any time, very accessible, but thank you so much. And and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye. Okay, hopefully everybody can still see my screen. Let's see, where did I leave off? I don't remember if I didn't talk about this. So I will go a little bit quicker through the deck because I'm sure that we are running out of time. So basically, the CQ for department team meetings is very similar to projects. You can assess the CQ in the team, and the example in the book was a team that was working well together, and they assessed their CQs, and they emerged with new insights about themselves, and they had respect for each other that was different, and they had new agreements on ways of working. And there's another example, which is a department team that's in strife. And they realized that they had too few people with heart. And the quote that I took there was, they said, "No wonder we never came together as a team and didn't communicate effectively." They also realized that they weren't meeting goals because they only had executors on the team that were external project managers. They weren't part of the team and didn't really have a voice. And that they also realized that they were constantly changing requirements. And this really resonated with me because I feel like I've been on project teams like that. And they realized that the leaders were all visionaries. Of note of caution, we don't dump all responsibility on people whose style match the work. We each have a profile, but profiling is forbidden. CQ for organizations is also a thing that you can use CQ for. We as change managers use this as part of our assessment every time we work on a project, especially if we're in a new organization. CQ is a component of every organization's culture. Some companies thrive on change. I'm thinking like maybe Amazon, while others are slow to adapt, and most companies are slow to adapt to change. CQ helps when change seems hard, leaders struggle to manage change initiatives often fail. We've seen projects fail and then come in with a new system, and it's like the same problem that you're trying to solve, but just a different vendor. Or people complain about flavor of the month, changes that fail to stick. And oftentimes I've seen that when there's reorganizations, like every 6 months, people are like, we don't have to change. We'll just wait till the next person comes. And then, of course, organizations that lack a consistent organization-wide approach to leading change or no approach at all. And then here's some tips. You start at the top, develop change leaders at all levels, plant many seeds, cascade down and move across the organization. And this is what we often as change managers call a change network or change champions. We also utilize CQ methods and tools to develop a consistent language and approach to change. It's super helpful if everybody's talking the same language. We integrate other change methodologies. I integrate with ProSci for my change template. You heard the author talking about Cotter and some of those methodologies. The second from the bottom is we avoid labeling change as programs. Change is constant. Treat change as a new way of life. I wouldn't say that I'm very good about that. I would imagine that change agile companies probably are good at that. And then the last one, practice courageous conversations. CQ and changes of the life cycle. Linking CQ to change management, you'll probably recognize the 3 round balls in the diagram here. Plan, do, sustain. Very similar to project management. For CQ, this is diagnosing and developing your capacity to lead change or change leadership. For change management, it's different than CQ. Change management is a set of techniques that you, the change leader, can apply to a change process. Change managers typically in the planning process, they develop the vision, the change readiness, create a plan. And then in the do piece, change managers communicate, train, and modify processes. And then in the sustain piece, this is the piece that often project managers leave the project. Change managers, their job really starts once a project launches. They make sure that the systems are adopted. They ensure integration and examine lessons learned. I took one piece out of the book, the planning stage, and talked a little bit about the different gaps that people have that they can address in the planning stage. So for example, HEART, they are oriented change leaders need to stay focused on strategy and tactics. They can't get distracted by the people. And an emphasis on project planning can help with them. That's one of the tools I use because I used to be a project manager, very quick to go to the project plan. For those that are strong in head, those oriented change leaders need to stay focused on keeping people and processes on their radar screen. Some of the things that can help them are doing the stakeholder analysis and a leadership involvement plan. And then the hands. These oriented change leaders need to stay focused on keeping stakeholders and goals on their radar screen. Leadership tools can help them. Here are the different stages that people go through as they go through change. And then I picked one from the book, Denial. And the folks that are high in heart have the easiest time getting people through that denial stage. I picked denial because it's probably the hardest stage to get people through. And the heart folks are most sensitive to the emotions of others in the denial phase. They focus on their strengths, the inquisitiveness about people, and want to understand, like, where are they? Make sure that they're aware of the change. They'll show them pictures, and they're very quick to understand what the current state and the future state is and explain that to people. Folks that are high in head can be so caught up in getting on with the change, they're driving towards the end, they may fail to see denial in others at all. So for them, it helps if these are the visionaries, they formally announce the change, talk about it with people. They try to do storytelling and paint a picture for others. They typically are pretty good at that, and where the change is going to take the organization. And then lastly, hands, they are so quick. They want to execute, and they can be so caught up in that they may fail to see denial in their stakeholders. For them, focusing on their strengths, let people know what to expect and clarify the unknowns. You've got a project plan. You've done current state to future state. You probably already know all the processes and the timings. Share that with people, and you then get to hear from them as you also share. Also, project managers are typically good at facilitating sessions with their project team include users and facilitate a session with users as well and talk about the stuff that you know. Now I don't know if we have time or not, but I'll pass it over to Elaine or John, who will put us in breakout rooms, and a facilitator will then guide our group.
I was just going to say, maybe instead of doing that, we'll just stay in the main room and just
Okay.
have a conversation. Maybe we
Okay.
can talk a little bit about people's styles and any feedback from Barbara's information.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure where we were on time.
I have just about 15 minutes left.
I do have a thought or a question that I'd like to bring up.
Sure, Mary, maybe you stop sharing, and then John, could you put us all back on the screen? Oops, frozen. There we go.
Okay, so I go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, I thought this was a great discussion. It was fun to see the author too. So that's really cool. And one of the things that I think of so much as a project manager, to me, it's quite painful because these are great ideas, and it's so difficult very many times for the project manager to execute or to put these ideas into the process of their project, just because time is finite. And my most successful experiences has been when, let's say, we had a partner for implementation, and we purchased a work stream that would be change management. And the last project I ran, the ton of stuff they produced. So do folks have ideas, or how do they minimize the risk and the pain when they do not have the ability to have a dedicated change management work stream? How do they maximize the ability to incorporate those change processes into their projects? Wondering if anybody had ideas, successes, ways that they have used in the past.
I think one of the things that's helpful is if it's a new tool or a process, if it's super intuitive and something that people really, really want. I remember our company launched a tool where we could take pictures of our receipts, and it would automatically upload into the system and then actually go through an approval process, and it would take like a minute. While before that, I used to use Excel spreadsheets, and especially like when I was traveling and trying to convert the currencies, it was a nightmare. When I heard this was coming, I was super excited, and I didn't even need to go to training. It was so easy to use. I think if you have a tool that's super easy, then it makes it a lot easier, and people will be a lot more quick to adopt than if it's a harder tool.
Yeah, I think part of what you're saying, Mary, is that it really is important that the communication that goes on at the beginning of the project, that people actually understand. And your example is a perfect one, because everyone can see the benefits of it. But some of the projects that we're on are so complicated, involve so much technology that and you don't want to give up a couple of sessions to just get all your shareholders to buy in. But that is so important. And I think that somebody said it takes about 3 tries to explain. And often I know we're down to half-hour meetings. And so there's just so much you can explain in that meeting. But if you have 3 of them and try to get people to understand the end game and where the benefits are to them and how their skills could be useful to it, I find is very, very, very helpful.
It's also helpful when organizations have a group that can share that change. Like they can get out the message and they can talk to their peers and let other people know. I've worked in other companies that have digital change leaders or change champions, a network that's already set up. All you do is you go in and present, and then they go and they share the changes with other people and get the word out.
The other thing I found interesting that the author said was that the first response is to your reptilian brain. And that it clicks something for me that, I think that people are afraid of change. We've always done it this way. I don't know how many times I've heard that when I start a project. We've always done it this way. Why do we have to change? And talking people through that goes back to the point you were making in the book about denial, where people are like, why do we have to do this? And I think that's part of what change management does. And I've never thought of that as really being part of change management, but it is. It's talking people around that part of the brain.
Mary, I think Tisha has a comment as well.
Yeah, Tisha, did you want to say something?
Hi, yeah, I was just gonna say that I think for me the biggest takeaway from the book was that it's more about people than the process of change. Just like Stella said, I think involving the people up front, explaining what it is, and not taking for granted that you really do have to kind of campaign and champion for it in order for it to be accepted and to lower the resistance to it. Because a lot of places they may have a change management board, they may have certain people that approve changes, but a lot of times the people that approve the change are not the people that are majorly impacted, So I think, talking to all levels, getting people to understand it from their level, really helps it, expand throughout an organization, especially when it's a real transformation happening. I think that's super important.
I'm curious, would we maybe want to take a show of hands to see where people think they are? So like, if you can, what do? You raise your hand or you have a reaction?
Reaction.
Yeah, if everybody wants to raise or clap, I guess. No, thumbs up. A thumbs up if you're ahead, or if you think you lead with your head. Oops, actually, I'm not one of those though. Well, good. So we have a few. So how about, do you think that you lead with heart? So give a thumbs up if you're heart, which that would be me. Okay, we definitely have some more heart people here. Good. And then if you are hands, whoops. I can't get mine off. Oh, okay. I would expect a lot of hands. Good. Okay. Does anybody else have anything else that they'd like to share?
Well, I think there was a comment in the chat. People wanted to know how to get the report on if they wanted to take the survey. I'm not sure what you call it, but
yes, in the book there are three chapters, and at the very end of the first chapter, in my book it's page 20, which that doesn't help, you can't see that. But it talks about the website that you can go to, which is the Change Catalyst website, which I think somebody put in the chat, and you go there, and if you have the book, you just put in a code and you can get the report, which it's quite a few number of pages. Super helpful though.
So Mary, I'm finding that the Kindle and electronic books don't have that code. So I think there might be a special purchase required for the electronic books.
Oh, I did not know that. That
But
doesn't seem right.
Yeah, the hard copy has a code in it, it seems.
I'll ask the author about that.
Yeah, there was a note to send an email to info to an info email address. And you can get it through that same link if you follow the directions.
Thank you.
Okay, great. It sounds like Tisha did get a code when she emailed them, so that's great.
No, thank you.